They told me I wasn't welcome at my sister's wedding, that my presence would shatter their flawless world, so they slammed the door in my face. But what they didn't realize, without me, their perfect facade would crumble. My name is Claire Matthews, and for 29 years, I lived as a ghost, unseen, unheard, erased from the family story. Growing up in the Matthews family was like living in a world of perfect illusions. We were the family everyone admired, successful, polished, and seemingly flawless. Our smiles were like photographs, carefully arranged and curated for the world to see. Rachel, my sister, was the shining jewel of our family, the golden child who everyone adored, who excelled in everything she did, and who was destined to have the perfect life, the perfect wedding, the perfect family. And then there was me, a shadow in the background, the fracture beneath the surface of the Matthews empire, the one who didn't fit into their glossy picture, the one no one ever noticed unless they needed someone to blame. The day I found out I wasn't invited to Rachel's wedding, it felt like the ground beneath me had cracked open. I can still remember the cold, heart-wrenching moment. I had walked into the living room, hoping for a little warmth, a hint of family unity, only to find my mother's eyes quickly shifting away from mine, as if my presence had burned her. "Claire," she had said, her voice as icy as the marble floors beneath my feet, "you're not needed at this wedding. It's not for you." The words hung in the air like heavy stones. My chest tightened. My heart sank. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the erasure. The feeling that I had never been a part of this family to begin with, that my existence was a quiet burden, a flaw in their perfect story. I remember sinking to the cold apartment floor, the silence roaring louder than any harsh word ever could. It wasn't the pain of being excluded, it was the devastation of knowing that, to them, I wasn't even worth the effort to pretend I mattered. For years, I had been the silent daughter, the invisible sister. Every milestone Rachel reached was a reminder of how far I fell short. Every success she had only deepened my sense of worthlessness. I was the broken piece in their perfectly painted picture. With trembling hands, I packed a suitcase. But I didn't just pack clothes. I packed fragments of a dream that had been shattered, the remnants of the person I once tried to be, a person who was no longer wanted, no longer necessary. I fled to a distant shore, chasing a hope, however fragile. That distance could heal wounds too deep for words. But peace was an illusion. The weight of abandonment followed me everywhere I went. I convinced myself that if I went far enough, if I left behind everything, I could forget the pain. But the truth? I couldn't escape the memories, the whispers, or the shame. Then came the phone call that shattered what little peace I had left. Rachel's wedding. The perfect culmination of all their dreams, their flawless world was falling apart. Secrets, lies, and scandals erupted, poisoning the image they had spent years crafting. The truth came tumbling out like a cracked dam, flooding every corner of their pristine world. And there it was, my absence. The absence they had thought would go unnoticed, but it was the very crack in their perfect foundation. A delicate vase, shattered beyond repair, its fragments glinting painfully in the fading light of their perfect life. I stood by my apartment window, watching the rain fall softly outside, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel the weight of what had been stolen from me. Nights stretched on, each one longer than the last, a battlefield where hope and despair waged war within me. The quiet of my new life felt suffocating. Each night, as I lay in my bed, the darkness seemed to press in around me, heavy with memories of rejection. My mind raced with a never-ending barrage of questions, each one deeper and darker than the last. Why am I not enough? Why do I feel so invisible, even in my own life? How did they make me feel so small, like I was never meant to be here? The apartment I rented was cold, stark, and silent, a far cry from the polished warmth of the Matthews mansion, where everything had once been so perfectly arranged. I no longer had the luxury of pretending that I belonged. I spent hours staring out the window, watching the world go by, my reflection staring back at me. A woman I no longer recognized. A woman torn between the ashes of the past and the smoldering embers of something new, something strong. The phone call came one rainy evening. The kind of phone call that shatters your fragile peace. The one you never expect but feel coming from miles away. It was a reporter, asking questions about Rachel's wedding or what was left of it. I hadn't planned to be part of the story. I was supposed to be erased from it, but the moment I heard those words, "The wedding has been canceled, and the family is in chaos," I felt the world tilt on its axis. I thought of my absence, of how they had slammed the door in my face, and I realized then, they had underestimated me. They had underestimated the power of my absence. I realized that for all these years, I've been living in the shadow of my family. They had taken over both my space and my time. Every dream of mine was merely a shadow of the expectations they placed upon me. Night falls, and I struggle with myself once again. Not because I don't want to rise, but because I don't know where to start. I wonder if I have the strength to start over, to turn everything into reality. These thoughts swirl in my mind like relentless waves crashing against the shore. Every time I think about my family, about Amber's mocking words, something tightens in my throat, as if I can't breathe. She was always there, haunting me with her cruel words. "Claire, stop dreaming. We don't need foolish dreams." That phrase echoes in my head, like an open wound that's never healed. I am no longer the girl who lived in delusions. Everything changes now, and I will not let them control my life any longer. When I returned to the city, I didn't feel like I was coming home. In reality, nothing had changed. The Matthews family still wore their perfect mask, while I, Claire Matthews, the discarded child, remained nothing more than a shadow they wanted to forget. But I was no longer the same girl I used to be. I was a woman now strong, determined, and I wasn't going to back down. That evening, when I entered the family dining room, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The weight of years of tension filled the air. Every movement felt like a deliberate statement. Amber sat at the head of the table, her posture rigid, exuding superiority. Her eyes locked onto me, sharp and filled with disdain. The smugness in her expression was as sharp as ever. I could feel the venom in her gaze. "Claire," she sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "do you really think you belong here? This is our world, not yours." Her words weren't just insults. They were a challenge, a declaration of war. I felt the sting of her words cut into me, but I didn't flinch. This was no longer about me fighting for their approval. This was about me reclaiming my place. My silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. My father, usually the silent judge, finally broke his long-held silence with a sigh that seemed to echo through the room. "You need to understand your place, Claire," he said, his tone cold and detached. "Sometimes, knowing when to step back is the smartest thing you can do." The words hit me harder than I expected. They weren't just harsh, they were dismissive. They made me feel invisible, as if I didn't even matter enough for a second glance. Mom, sitting across from me, avoided my gaze entirely. Her silence was suffocating, like an impenetrable wall I couldn't break through. She leaned in to whisper something to Amber, not caring that I could hear every word. "She's naive. She doesn't understand how the world works." The weight of their disdain felt like it was crushing me. Each word they spoke, each look they gave me, was another brick added to the wall between us. But it wasn't just their words. Their actions, their indifference that was the betrayal. A few days later, I stumbled upon a forwarded email, an invitation to a family meeting. It wasn't just any meeting. It was the one where they had made decisions about the future of Matthews Enterprises. The future I had been excluded from. I had been deliberately locked out. It wasn't just about being ignored anymore. This was a conspiracy. They weren't just keeping me out of family events. They were stripping me of my voice, my place in the family, my chance to contribute. For a long time, I wrestled with my own doubts. I questioned my worth, my place in the family. Was I truly a mistake? Or was this my moment to rise? I spent sleepless nights in turmoil, torn between seeking their approval and finding the strength to stand on my own. But slowly, as the anger simmered within me, something shifted. I couldn't let them continue to dictate my life. I couldn't let them decide who I was. From the depths of this despair, a fire was lit within me, a fire that wouldn't be extinguished. Every harsh word, every moment of rejection became fuel for my determination. I began to prepare, quietly and strategically. They thought they had broken me, but in reality, they had only made me stronger. Every family gathering became a silent battlefield. The smiles we exchanged at the table weren't real. They were facades hiding the bitterness between us. The laughter that once brought us together now felt forced and empty. Amber, sensing my change, decided to push further. One evening, she gave me that smirk, the one that said she was superior, untouchable. "You think you can walk away and come back like nothing happened?" she sneered. "Keep dreaming." Her words, though harsh, didn't faze me anymore. I had come to understand something powerful. The truth wasn't just about who was right or wrong in our family. It was about my willingness to claim my place, no matter how they saw me. The days that followed were nothing short of a battle. Each one felt like a struggle for air, but with each breath, I could feel myself growing stronger. The Matthews family's grip on me was slipping, and I was beginning to see it not just in their words or their dismissive stares, but in their actions. Every family gathering, every business meeting, was now charged with an undeniable tension. Amber's smirks became more frequent, her barbed comments more biting, as if she sensed my change. But with each dig, each sneer, I grew more resolute. The day I walked into that boardroom, it wasn't just another meeting. It wasn't even about the business we were discussing. It was about claiming my place at the table, about proving that I had more than just the right to be there. I had earned the power to change everything. Amber sat at the head of the table, her usual smug grin plastered on her face. She thought I was still the same scared, invisible girl who had been pushed aside. But today, she would see something different. The room fell into silence the moment I stepped in. The air thickened with expectation, as if the very walls knew something big was about to happen. Amber's eyes locked onto mine, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker in them, disbelief, maybe even fear. She couldn't fathom that I had come here not to ask for permission, but to take what was mine. I walked confidently to the front of the room, feeling every set of eyes on me. The tension was electric. They were all waiting for me to speak, but for once, I was the one holding the power. I cleared my throat and spoke, my voice steady and unwavering, despite the storm that was raging inside me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my words carrying more weight than I had ever imagined. "I'm proud to announce that I am now the majority owner of Matthews Enterprises." Amber's fork clattered onto her plate, a sharp, piercing sound that seemed to shatter the room's fragile calm. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. She was frozen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Dad, the usually stoic patriarch, gripped the edge of the mahogany table so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His calm facade was gone. For the first time in years, he seemed vulnerable. His voice, trembling, broke the silence. How did you pull this off?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I allowed myself a slow, victorious smile. The smile of someone who had carefully played the long game and had come out on top. "While you doubted me, I forged alliances with investors you refused to meet. I signed contracts behind your backs. I closed deals you thought were impossible. And I earned the respect you never gave me," I said, each word filled with the quiet confidence of someone who had proven herself against all odds. The faces around the table betrayed shock, fury, and most of all, fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of the very system they had created crumbling before their eyes. Amber, who had never had to work a day in her life for the approval she received, was now faced with the harsh reality that things were changing, and fast. "You'll never be one of us. This is a mistake," Amber spat, her voice dripping with venom. I leaned in, my gaze unwavering, locking eyes with her. For the first time, I saw her as she truly was not the golden child, but a woman holding onto a crumbling legacy. "This isn't a mistake," I said, my voice cold and unyielding. "This is your reckoning." The room was thick with tension, the weight of years of unspoken battles finally coming to the surface. But I wasn't done. Not yet. As I stood there, I saw things beginning to shift. A trusted board member who had always sided with Amber subtly shifted his loyalty. The whispers of my rise had begun to unsettle the old alliances, and it was clear that I wasn't just a threat to Amber anymore. I was a force they could no longer ignore. Just as the meeting seemed to be at a standstill, an unexpected phone call came through. A major investor who had initially expressed reservations had just reaffirmed their commitment to my vision. It was a clear signal that the winds of change were blowing in my direction. The air in the room crackled with tension. They hadn't seen this coming. Amber's smugness was gone, replaced by raw panic. She no longer saw me as the outcast. Now, she saw me as the storm she had never expected. As I left the boardroom, the city outside seemed to mirror my transformation. The night was heavy, but the distant lights of the city flickered like stars, each one a reminder of what awaited me. I wasn't the girl they tried to erase anymore. I was a woman reborn, stronger, wiser, and ready to carve my own path. In my office, the fire within me burned brighter than ever. The darkness outside, the looming uncertainty, they no longer had the power to intimidate me. The road ahead was still uncertain. Challenges, storms, and obstacles would always be a part of life. But for the first time, I felt ready. Ready to take control of my own fate. Ready to build the future that had always been within my reach, despite the obstacles that had been thrown in my way. This was not the end. It was just the beginning. The future was mine to shape, and I was no longer waiting for it to happen. The room buzzed with unspoken words, the tension hanging like a dense fog. My family, once so united in their cold, controlled perfection, was now unraveling before my eyes. They hadn't just been unseated from power, they were crumbling, bit by bit. And it wasn't me that had caused their downfall. No, it was their own arrogance and fear that had done that. They had built this false empire, believing it could never fall. But I, Claire Matthews, had seen the cracks long before they did. Outside the windows, the night stretched on, dark and endless. But inside, a new light was beginning to shine. It wasn't the sterile, cold light of the family mansion. It was the warm glow of something real, something earned. I stood in my office, gazing out at the sprawling city beneath the quiet sky. Every flickering street lamp was a reminder that there was still so much out there waiting for someone brave enough to claim it. A feeling of calm settled over me as I realized how far I had come. The pain, the doubt, the rejection, it had all led me to this moment. This new version of myself, the one who didn't need their validation. The one who had built her empire with nothing but sheer will. I wasn't the girl they had tossed aside. I wasn't the woman they had tried to erase from their perfect picture. I was the storm they hadn't seen coming. I wasn't just here to survive anymore. I was here to thrive, to rewrite the rules that had been dictated to me for so long. Every moment of weakness, every tear, every sleepless night had been the fire that forged the person I was now. It had been painful, but the scars were my strength. I'd fought my demons in silence and come out stronger on the other side. No more would I be the shadow they dismissed. No more would I be the ghost that haunted their perfect lives. I was the woman who walked away from their expectations and into my own future, one that I would build, brick by brick, from the ground up. The road ahead wasn't easy, and I knew that. But it wasn't about the road being easy. It was about who I was becoming on that road. The woman I was now was someone they could never have imagined, someone unstoppable, someone who didn't wait for permission to rise. I had learned that true power doesn't come from being accepted or praised. It comes from the quiet moments when you decide to stand up for yourself, when you choose not to be defined by anyone else's narrative. I was rewriting my story, and the best part? I was only getting started. As I looked out at the awakening city, I knew this was just the beginning. There were more battles ahead. There would be more obstacles. But now, I was the one steering the ship. I held the wheel. I was no longer at the mercy of anyone else's decisions. I had learned to trust myself, to trust my instincts. The storm was over, and the calm that followed was more powerful than any chaos I had ever known. To anyone out there who's ever felt invisible, who's ever been told they weren't enough, who's ever been pushed to the edges of their own life, know this. Your moment is coming. You have the power to rewrite your own story. You have the strength to rise again and again, no matter how many times you fall. The road ahead may be uncertain. The future might be unclear. But one thing I know for sure, the best is yet to come. This is not the end, it is a new beginning, and I am ready for it. The city lights flicker below, a promise of new opportunities. The night may have been dark, but the dawn is breaking. I'm ready. Ready to rise. Ready to claim my destiny. If this story resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button to show your support. And share this video with anyone who needs a dose of inspiration, strength, and resilience. Subscribe now for more powerful stories that will ignite your fire, and leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever had to fight for your place in this world? What's your story? Let's connect, share, and grow together. Thank you for watching. Your support means everything to me. Let's rise together. The best is yet to come.